I'm just lying here, patiently waiting for the next episode of Baggy Hi-Fi. Greetings, cats and kittens. Welcome once again to Baggy Hi-Fi, this YouTube channel devoted to record collecting and the vinyl community here in the UK. Hope everyone is keeping well. We're nearly at the end of November now. It's getting rather chilly outside. This latest video is part 3 of my ongoing series of some British jazz records. And often we record collectors are accused of just being motivated by nostalgia when we're buying records, and I think that accusation is quite accurate to a certain degree, because often we're trying to buy records from a certain period of music that we like, or a certain period of our life that we like. We're not necessarily always buying new stuff. But for me, really, over this last couple of years, discovering British jazz has been discovering a lot of music I've never heard before, and I've really been enjoying a lot of it. I'm not, as I mentioned in my first British jazz video, I'm not new to jazz completely, because I was, very aware of sort of the jazz rock of bands like Soft Machine and the sort of Canterbury kind of connection with on the fringes of jazz. But I've been working my way backwards, through the 60s and even into the 50s. That's really, I think, was probably the 60s when British jazz forged its own identity and became quite experimental, and certainly into the 70s there's a lot of very interesting music which was pushing the boundaries of jazz, and it was the equal of music going on in the States and in Europe. But I mentioned the 1950s because the first record I'm going to show is from 1959. It's a lovely EP on Decca from 1959 and called Fluke Digs Jazz. And Fluke is a character that Wally Fawkes invented, because not only was Wally Fawkes a clarinetist, a jazz clarinetist, but he was also a brilliant political cartoonist who created the character Fluke along with, I think, Humphrey Lyttelton and George Melly. It was a comic strip which appeared in the Daily Mail, and Wally Fawkes, under the name of Trog, was also a cartoonist. I'll just show you one of his books from the 80s. This is a cartoonorama by Trog, and this is very much of the era. There's Margaret Thatcher and Ronnie Reagan, but great cartoonist, but also a great musician, a jazz musician, part of that sort of Soho scene of not avant-garde at all. These musicians at the time in the 50s were playing fairly traditional New Orleans style jazz, traditional jazz, and Wally Fawkes is one of the musicians that was part of that scene. So that's one of his drawings there, and it's very, very nice, and the music's lovely. I'm going to play you a needle drop from this EP, which is on Decca. Coming forward, a later recording by Wally Fawkes, which I bought recently on a trip to Carlisle. This is on the Calligraph label, and this is more of the same, except this is recorded in 1985 at Pizza Express in Dean Street, and Humphrey Lyttelton's on here. Humphrey Lyttelton presented a jazz program on Radio 2, I think it would have been, or the Light program, for many years, and bit of a raconteur. Also appeared on the radio show I'm Sorry I Haven't a Clue. I can have vague memories of hearing Humphrey Lyttelton on the radio, my dad listening to Jazz Club and other jazz programs that he presented. So this is another one, very nice record. Quite a small label, I think, this Calligraph label of Barnet, North London. Now moving on to some CDs now, because most of the music I'm going to show are originals in this video, but apart from the CDs, which are just been recently released, but they are of archive recordings. And one of my very favourite British jazz artists is Michael Garrick, who I've shown before, a pianist and composer and arranger who gathered some really interesting musicians around himself, and also was quite experimental. He was interested in jazz music being part of sort of religious liturgy. He was also interested in combining poetry and jazz, and there's some of that on this CD. So this is, I can thank Ed Pinson for drawing my attention to this release, which has just come out this year. It's a compilation of radio recordings by the Michael Garrick Sextet, featuring Don Rendell and also the vocalist Norma Winston. I'm going to play you a needle drop from this as well. Recordings from 1967 and 1969. And the second half was some marvellous combinations of poetry and some sort of free jazz blowing by his exceptional band that Michael Garrick had around him. The first half, the first recordings are instrumentals from a jazz program introduced by the ubiquitous Humphrey Lyttelton, and they are very much compositions. Michael Garrick definitely in charge on these lovely recordings. Also on the same label, I didn't mention what the label is on these CDs, so issuing some archive recordings. It's the Rhythm and Blues label. I have the catalogue here, and they're all mainly all released on CD, but there's some really interesting archive recordings, not only of jazz artists but some early rock and roll people and early 60s people like the Rolling Stones and Georgie Fame, people like that. Very interesting for fans of 60s British music. In the same series, the Rhythm and Blues series, this is the Rendell Carr Quintet, Don Rendell and Ian Carr Quintet. Very, very important band in the in 60s British jazz. Ian Carr, trumpet player, and Don Rendell, sax player. These are radio recordings from 1965 to 1966. Excellent stuff. Been enjoying these. I've only had them a couple of weeks, but been playing them a lot. I haven't mentioned in this era is Joe Harriott. I've shown him before, I think in my first British jazz video, but this is a record by him that I've been trying to get hold of for a while, a nice copy of, that is. Joe Harriott was a fairly sort of mainstream, but very accomplished player of sort of bebop, British bebop and hard bop, but he also had an experimental side to him, and I've shown some of his sort of more free music that he was playing, but he also was interested in fusion, early fusion with Indian music, as was Michael Garrick. So Joe Harriott and John Mayer put together this record in 1967, which is a very famed record. This is it's called Indo Jazz Fusion, and this is an original copy from 1967, an American copy on the Atlantic label. There we are, Atlantic. Really nice copy, very pleased to get it. The sitar on here, there are tabla combined with Joe Harriott's saxophone playing, some violin as well, so quite a lot of musicians on here. Great to have a copy of this. I would recommend, if you ever see a copy of this, to snap it up, because it's a fairly early example of fusion, although not in the 70s fusion sense. This is British jazz combined with very much Indian music. And I, as I was playing it for the first time all the way through, I recognised one of the tracks, which is called Akka Raga, and it was a theme song from a quiz programme that we ran in the 70s called Ask the Family, presented by plummy-voiced Robert Robinson. So that was a very nice discovery, but yeah, great record. And I'll play you some needle drops now.
This is Michael Garrick introducing tonight's jazz workshop, which will feature poetry and jazz. The music is provided by my own sextet, the poetry by Jeremy Robson and John Smith. Our first item, by Jeremy Robson, is called Cascade.
Can you hear the thunder? Can you hear the thunder? My love cascading towards you in a torrent of hope. It chases over sun-drugged streets at midday, over frost-stung fields at midnight to breathe beneath your window. Can you hear it now? Perhaps the tone is too high or the words too long, or perhaps the rain or pain has washed it away. Don't go, listen, listen. Let me try my song again.
That was called Spooks, which Ian, Dave and myself cooked up. And this next one we're going to do, which is called The Hot Rod, composed by Ian and Mike Garrick. The title Hot Rod, it may interest you because Ian has an artist friend who has a hot rod. It's one of those pretty way out cars that go all kinds of speeds. Anyway, so this is very, very much of an up-tempo thing, the hot rod, very much in keeping with the car. And it's one of the numbers, together with Spooks, which we recorded recently for an LP, which is due for release in the late summer. So here it is, the hot rod.
Next, I'm going to show you a new release of some archive recordings from 1965. Another artist around about the same time as Michael Garrick and Don Rendell and Ian Carr. Mike Taylor, pianist. Mike Taylor. This is Mike Taylor Quartet. Mike Taylor, quite a tragic figure, very talented pianist who died at the age of 30 and only released, I think, 2 records in his own time. One of them is very, very expensive to get hold of, called Pendulum. Even the reissue is very expensive, so I jumped at the chance to get this recording on Sunbeam Records have put out. Really nicely done, gatefold sleeve with some ads from the time. Also with a booklet with a story of Mike Taylor. Very, very detailed information about him. I think he's schizophrenic, but as I say, really talented pianist. These are some really nice recordings, including a version of Pendulum on here. Mike Taylor piano, Dave Tomlin soprano saxophone, Tony Reeves double bass, and John Heisman on drums, who would later on to go to form jazz rock band Colosseum. So that's a really nice one. That's Preparation by the Mike Taylor Quartet. Now this next one is a duo recording of a veteran British jazz artist, Stan Tracey, with a slightly younger musician playing with him, Mike Osborne. So this is called Original, and there's Stan Tracey with his long hair at the time and playing the piano, and Mike Osborne. Now Mike Osborne described as a questing improviser, and this is he was part of Chris McGregor's Brotherhood of Breath band, and also Mike Westbrook band. I showed Mike Westbrook in an earlier British jazz video, but this one is on the Cadillac label, and it's fairly free, totally improvised, just one long piece, goes over two sides of the record. It's really good when you're in the mood for it, to really concentrate on that interplay between the piano and the saxophone. But really nice original there. This is from 1972. And I mentioned Canterbury and that scene of Hatfield in the North, which were kind of on the fringes of jazz rock in the 70s. But one of the artists associated with that scene is Lol Coxhill. He was a member of Kevin Ayers' Whole World band, a saxophone player, often soprano sax. And this record is one on the Caroline label, which is a subsidiary of Virgin. This is from 1973, and it's Lol Coxhill playing with Steve Miller, who's the keyboard player. And also there are guest musicians on here connected with Hatfield and the North, Pip Pyle, Richard Sinclair from Caravan and Hatfield and the North, Phil Miller, who was also with Hatfields, I think. And it's a lovely, lovely record, this one. I would say, describe it as a rainy day record. It's all fairly sort of slow and contemplative, but with some melody in there, but also some free playing, and it's a very, very nice record. I really would like to get more by Lol Coxhill. That's him there. And just a bit of trivia, the song For Free by Joni Mitchell, which you may know, is where she describes a busker playing saxophone real good for free. Well, that song was written about Lol Coxhill, who was playing on a bridge in London when Joni happened to be passing by. Now, the last couple of items are connected with John Stevens, the drummer. John Stevens is famed for being part of a pioneering free jazz ensemble, the Spontaneous Music Ensemble. And this is another one on the Rhythm and Blues label, which has just come out this year. Some archive recordings. It's a double CD, this one. It's called Questions and Answer, 1966, by the Spontaneous Music Ensemble. Really, really good stuff. I've only played this one once. It's quite different from the record I'm going to show next, the last record I'm going to show in this batch. And I've shown another release by this combo that John Stevens put together, who recorded on Vertigo, part of that crossover into rock territory. And the band was called John Stevens Away. This one's one called Somewhere in Between on Vertigo. It's not fusion really, but it is quite, it's electric. There's an electric guitar, electric bass, and also double bass. Fairly sparse, but quite funky as well. I'm not sure whether I really I do like this, But I think I probably prefer John Stevens and his guys in the Spontaneous Music Ensemble. But nevertheless, really nice. Pleased to get another copy of a John Stevens Away record. It does have a bit of writing on the front, a Radio Trent, so it's obviously from a music library, but it's in the vinyl's in really good condition. So yeah, I've been enjoying that one, but I would really like to get some original Spontaneous Music Ensemble vinyl, but it's very, very expensive and quite hard to, it's very elusive, quite hard to get hold of. So that's my latest batch of British jazz records. Maybe it doesn't appeal to everyone. I know I don't really get as many views for these British jazz videos, but I will persevere because it's music I like, and that's probably what the VC is all about, isn't it? Talking about music that you enjoy. So as I said at the beginning, I hope everyone's keeping well and keeping warm as winter draws on. See you next time in the next video, and bye for now.